Hi everyone. So today we are going to talk to Riddhi Diora. She's a parenting coach. She's amazing in what she's doing right now. She is the founder of Easy Parenting Hub. She has helped so many parents actually connect with their children. So, we are talking about why reading is important. So, just to give you a brief intro as to what Fun of Fable is, what Fun of Fable is we deal in international books. We are a children's reading subscription box. What do you mean by that is that we send books to your house at your doorstep every month consistently, so that the reading schedule, the reading of your child does not stop. How are we different from the regular bookstores is that we get you the best of the international books which we can procure from international markets. We try to get the bestsellers, the critically acclaimed books, so that your child is can get the books which children are reading across different countries. So geography should actually not define what a child reads, and these books are meant for children to read and fall in love with reading. So that's when we saw that Riddhi ma'am is really good in when it comes to her own child when he reads, and he's such a well-read child. When we connected with her, we heard that he has nearly 400 500 books already. So that's when we could connect, that she could understand what Fun of Fable is actually trying to do. Not just giving you the books that we just don't want to just give you the books which we procure, but we actually want to make sure that your child loves reading. And anybody who would like to know about our subscription details, you can actually log into our website, that is www.funoffable.com, or you can send us message on our WhatsApp number or Instagram DMs. So now, without further ado, let's hear from the expert herself that why she thinks that reading is important. Reading not only helps only in literacy skills, it also goes a long way in actually making your child. Hi ma'am, how are you?
Hi, Sonia. How are you? I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving us your time. We would
Yes, sure.
really want people to know that, I was just talking that reading is only not important to give your child literacy skills, but also the behavioral skills, the emotional skills, and the social skills can also be learned through reading. And,
That is so true.
without me taking much of this time, I would hand over to you, ma'am. So if you
Yes,
would just
please.
like us, if you can just tell the audience actually where you come from when it comes to reading.
So I think reading is like a beautiful thing, and I feel through books you can do so much. You can travel, you can meet different people, you can learn about different countries, you can learn about so many things. You can be more aware of what's happening around you, and you can get so many new ideas about things that you can do, the things that can really help you. And not just for kids, I feel reading is something that is important for everyone, and it's a beautiful thing, and you can just sit home and do so much. And even if you're traveling, you should always have a book, I feel. And there's so much, and especially now because we have so much time,
Correct.
we should definitely have at least, if not too much. Sometimes we think about finishing a whole book, and that sort of stops us from starting the book. So I feel if you have like a system where you're just reading 5 to 10 pages every day, that's very good, and you'll not be spending more than, even if you're really slow, you'll not be spending more than half an hour. And we can all find half an hour. And once you
Correct.
start reading, I feel you start growing, and it's just beautiful, I feel.
Yeah, I'm sure
Right.
all Harry Potter fans can vouch that we ourselves have attended Hogwarts. So I am a big
Right.
fan of Harry Potter. Just by sitting at my home, I know I have attended Hogwarts and studied with Harry Potter and Hermione.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So, ma'am, actually, we wanted to understand, like, we know that your son reads. So, when do you think is the right time to start reading? Because many parents come and tell us that, my child has still not started reading. They don't read on their own. So, I don't know whether I should read to my child. So, what do you think is the right time to start reading?
See, actually, the child reading can obviously take a lot of time. It's not something that will happen instantly. Like, I wasn't reading anything till I was 8. So I don't, like, there should be no pressure on parents in terms of the child reading the book himself or herself. But yes, reading is something that you should definitely introduce your child to. And the sooner you start, the better it is because they get used to it, they get more comfortable with it. Also, if there are people around who are reading, then your child always wants to follow what they're seeing. So if your children are watching you read, they'll want to read. So I started when my son was, he used to lie down on the bed next to me. He was very tiny, like 2 months, 3 months, I think. And I used to just read. Anyway, you don't understand what to do with such tiny babies, right? They're just lying
Hmm.
down and they're sleeping most of the time. So you also really are very confused about what to do. And I feel books are beautiful because it can be a good conversation starter. You can obviously introduce them to different pictures, images. So if you have very tiny babies, then you start with board books, and you can start with books that have more pictures and less text on it. Also, those touch and feel books are great. And music books, those sound and music books, those books are good. So if you have tiny babies, you can have these kind of books. And I also used to read like long stories to my son when he was very tiny. And obviously, you cannot expect them to respond when they are tiny, and there's no way to validate whether your child is learning or is understanding what you're saying. But they do understand because just imagine, Sonia, they're picking up a whole language, and we
Correct.
never really try to teach them that language. So, if they can pick up an entire language on their own, there is no reason why they are not understanding or following what you're saying. Maybe not the first time, but if you keep repeating it a few times, they will understand. And how I understood was I used to show flashcards to Veer when he was very tiny. And of course, he was not responding, and there was no way for me to check whether he's understanding. And I was just doing it for fun. There was no target or something that I wanted to achieve, that today I'm going to make sure that he memorizes or he knows these words, because he was really tiny. So it was an unrealistic expectation to have. But after he started crawling, like when he was 7, 8 months, I used to sort of lay out like 7 to 8 flashcards on the bed, and I used to tell him, "Can you please go fetch the mango for me?" And he used to go and fetch the
Well
right
fed.
card. So,
Awesome.
that
Awesome.
was that's when I understood that, whatever I was doing is actually he's understanding. And when he started speaking, and I showed him, just to experiment, just to have fun, I showed him that whole deck of flashcards that I had been doing for really long, and I was doing it for fun. There was no pressure, and and when you're doing it with like joy and for fun, you can be very consistent about these activities. But if you're doing it with a target mission or something, there'll be no consistency. You'll give up.
Correct.
So when I showed him that deck, and I asked him that, can you tell me what is this? And he was speaking properly. Then he could tell me all the names. So it was
Awesome.
a very good feeling.
It's surprising
And
feeling.
I really didn't have to teach him anything, because he
Correct. Correct.
already knew it. And I think repetition really helps,
Yeah.
consistency really helps. And with kids, I feel consistency is always better than intensity. So instead of doing like 2 hours of reading every day, or 2 hours of reading once in 7 days, it's better that you do 10 minutes every day.
Every day.
You
Correct.
show
Correct.
them the book every day just for 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll not feel any pressure because 10
Mhm.
minutes is not difficult to find, and your child will not feel any pressure.
So now, because when we have done a lot of research when it comes to fun or fable as to why because people ask us, how can you read to a newborn? So the research actually they have done a lot of research based on in US, not mostly in India, but this has been done in US. They say that the maximum language development that a child in the child's brain that is happening till the age of 7 months and not 7 years. So you can see that it's peaking at 7 months. That means, till 7 months, whatever you're teaching them, they are just assimilating that knowledge. So you just keep reading to them, and they can
Right.
actually do that. And as you said, that consistency is very important. Yes, we also keep telling parents that we just send you two books, just keep repeating those books, and you will marvel at the fact that after a few days, the child who cannot read, they are just reading the story just by memorizing it. So that is
Right,
also
right.
very surprising.
Yes, and
So
actually,
somebody.
like, it's glad that you mentioned it. This also happened with my son. So I have this Peppa series, and the books were just kept, and he started picking books, and he was like, "Can you read?" And he was giving me the titles. Okay, and I was like shocked. I was like, "How is he reading? I've not taught him how to read."
Correct.
But he was obviously not reading. He was just picture reading. So,
Yeah.
he could link the titles with the images and he could read it. And because some books we had repeated so many times, so like you mentioned, he was flipping the pages, and every page he was reading the exact text, even without knowing how to read. So it
Correct.
was just
Correct.
like the picture, and he was telling the whole story. So
That's what
yes, this is
repetition does. Yeah.
yes, I feel that really helps. And kids also, they have their favorites. So when once they
Correct.
like something, they want you to keep reading those books to them. And
Okay.
again, this is something that, some mothers have actually asked me that, my child just wants to read this book. What do I do? So read those books, there's no problem,
Correct.
even if you're repeating those books. And then, you can tell your child, okay, I'm going to read this book, but before I read this book, you have to let me read this book to you as well. So,
Yeah.
you can actually read
In
both the books, but
both the
don't like
books.
stop reading the one that your child is enjoying.
Yeah. Another very important point that you made was that, you never tried to teach him. He learned it by play. That is what I keep telling parents, that reading should not be a chore. It should be enjoyable. They should be doing it in their leisure time. If you force them to
Right.
read, they start connecting it to education and school, and then they don't want to do it. So that is a
Right.
very good point, ma'am, that you made. So, how do you make him interested? Like you said that, he is stuck with one book, but you mentioned that you have read like more than 400, 500 books to him till now. And, but sometimes children want to read just one book. So, and sometimes children are not interested in reading. So, what is your experience in that? Like, you have worked with so many parents and children. How do you make a child get interested in reading, apart from, of course, getting them the best of the books, but still people don't read? I mean, children don't read.
Right. So actually, Sonia, I feel there are three kinds of kids. One who are natural readers and they love to read and they love books, they love to spend time with books. So if you have a child who's like that, then you really don't have to work too much. And I
Mhm.
feel that I have not done too much when it comes to read. He has always loved reading. The only thing that I feel I have done is, introduced him to books when he was really tiny, and I kept reading it to him, reading books to him, and also my husband reads a lot. I read. So, when you're in an environment where everybody else is reading, I think you sort of pick it up and you do it on your own. So that's the first group. Then there is a second group of children who are indifferent. If you give them a book, they'll read it. If you don't give them a book, they'll not go and fetch it. They
Mhm.
are like, that, okay, I don't mind books, but it's not like I really enjoy books. So with those kind of kids, again, you have a scope. So if you sit with them every day for 10-15 minutes, they are going to give you that time, and you can get them to, love books, read books,
Love
and
book.
expose them to
Mhm.
new books. And then there is a third group of kids who don't like the idea of sitting down and reading books at all. And for them, I feel there is no need for you to really push them or try too hard, because everybody loves stories. They might not like
Correct.
books, but they all like stories. So you can just tell them a story. If you have the book, you can read the book and you can tell your child the story. Maybe if your child doesn't like to sit, your child is moving, and you're moving with your child and telling them the story of your child is playing with his favorite toy. While your child is playing with his favorite toy, you can still tell your child that story because they're always listening. So you don't always need like 100% attention to tell them a story. And I feel so with the third group, which is like, kids
Reluctant
who
group.
don't really don't
Mhm.
enjoy reading, you just follow the story method. You tell them stories, and that's how you actually introduce them to different books. And you can if they don't like reading, maybe you can just sit with books and show them pictures, and you can make different games around those books, like maybe
That's a
can you
good
tell
idea.
me something about this page, or you see what your child is responding to, and then you sort of customize your method around your child and see what's working for your child. So forcing kids to read will never help. Also, I feel that we have to make kids make books like a desirable thing for them. If you
Correct.
keep throwing books at them, they run away from it. And this is very natural human behavior. When you have excess of anything, you don't want more of it. And when you get something very easily, you don't value it that much. So when you don't get it very easily, you value it more. So the system that I follow with my son is that every Friday I give him two new books, and otherwise he's allowed to read all the previous books
Old
that he
ones.
has already
Mm.
seen. But if he wants the new books, he has to wait for Friday. And when Friday, so every day he keeps checking, when am I getting my new books, when am I getting my new books. So it's something, it's like an interesting thing for him. He knows that it's not very easy for him to get those two new books. So you've made that. So with phone, why do kids
Correct.
always want the phone? They always want it because we're always taking it away from them.
Correct. Correct.
So that's why they're always running after the phone. So with books, if you feel that your child is not reading, maybe you can sit with their books and read it. And just maybe, sort of not invite them to sit with you, because when you don't invite them, then they really want to be invited, because there's
Correct.
this whole fear of missing out, and they're like, what is mommy doing? And she's not even calling me. And then they really want to be with you. And when they come to you, don't give in too easily. Be like, okay, I'm reading, can you not disturb me? And with kids, you have to be very creative. And you can be like, I'm reading this really interesting page and it's really fun. Can you do something on your own for some time? I don't want to be disturbed. And then they are going to
They
disturb you, and
wanted,
that's
yes.
given. They will, right? And they'll be like, I also want to know. And that's a good opportunity for you to be like, okay, let me think. And then you can actually, sort of tell them the story. So don't run after them, make them run after you. Find ways of doing it. Have a small reading corner, make it very attractive so that they automatically get drawn towards it. Make the books accessible so that if they want to pull it out themselves, they can. So for Veer also, I have like obviously a big space where I keep books, but also I have a box and I keep some books in that. And if Veer wants a book, he knows that he has to go to that box and he can fetch books from there. And I keep rotating those books. So you can have a space, small space, where your child can easily get access to those books. And I feel that really helps. And don't force and don't take too much pressure if your child is not reading. Start by telling them stories. And one other thing that I would like to mention is when you're telling stories, you have to do it very, like tell them the story in the language that they understand. This is very important because kids initially, for the first few years, they're always exposed to their first language, the mother tongue that's being
Mother tongue.
used in the house. Yeah, like Hindi, English, Telugu, whatever it is. So when you suddenly start reading books in English, your child is not going to connect. So if you have been reading to your child when your child was 2 months, 3 months, then they are going to, connect with the language because they are
Mhm.
also following that language. They're following both the languages. But let's say if your child has never heard English before and suddenly you've started reading books in English to your child might not show interest. If you read a book to me in French, I'm not going to pay any attention.
Attention.
And the
Correct.
problem is not with the book. The problem is not that I'm not interested. The problem is with the language. And because I'm not following what you're saying. So if that is the problem, then you first tell your child the story in the language that your child understands. So once your child understands the story, and repeat it two, three times in the language that your child understands, and then read the book in English, because then your child can actually connect those
Connect.
words and connect the story and understand, okay, this is what it means, and this is what it means in Hindi, and this is what it means in English. So then, your child will give you more interest and show more interest and might still like the whole experience of reading. And also, when you're reading, have like a lot of facial expressions, use your
Hmm.
body, and have different voices for different have different voice for different characters.
Characters.
So if there is, like, I always say this, if there is a bear and a mouse, and if both of them have the same voice, which is your voice, then you're not reading right. They have
Correct.
to have a different voice. And then your child is going to show interest. Sometimes you can also involve them in the story and make them role play. So the other day I was reading Ramayana, like it's a book, Ramayana story to Veer, and then we had different characters. I was Sita, he was Lakshman, and he was drawing the Lakshman Rekha for me, and then that
Okay.
whole thing, and I was like,
Role
I'm going to
play.
stand here. Yes, role play. So I was standing, and I was like, you have to take a chalk and you have to draw a circle around me, and that's called Lakshman Rekha, and you're Lakshman. And because you're drawing this line, this is called Lakshman Rekha. And I feel they understand and they find it very interesting when you get involved. And you can
Hmm.
only do this when you are reading with an attitude to have fun with your child and not with an attitude to actually teach them or
Hmm.
improve their vocabulary and all of that. So do all of this, and your children will definitely, I think, show more interest. And if they're still not showing enough interest, don't be too pushy because that's not going to help.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful perspective that you have given, and the beautiful take that
Right.
do not push them. Make it
Right.
desirable for them. Yeah, that's a very beautiful take on this.
Right.
So again, I had this question in line that how should I read to the child, but you have already covered that. So, but
Okay.
now the problem, that happens in during this pandemic is that children are actually stuck to phones, right? It's is far more interesting for them than reading a book. This is the problem which everybody is facing, and especially for elder kids. I'm not talking about a very young generation, like, not the 4 5 years. Still, you can give them books. But now parents come at the age of, 7 and 8, and they are like, okay, my son is always sitting in front of the system, playing games or watching TV. I want them to start reading. And that is the age when they've already made up their mind that, okay, reading is boring. Now, how do we
Right.
try to bring the changes there? What we do from our end is we send them, as we said, all the bestsellers, which are generally not available in India. So we procure that so that, the story is so interesting, the background is so interesting, all are award-winning books. They are award-winning. That's why, there has to be some content in that they are award-winning. We
Right, of
try to
course.
do that and send that. But still, how, as a behavioral change, that we can try to do something which we wanted to ask, what should parents do that an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old gets interested in reading?
Right. So again, screen time, I feel, is something that is completely under parental control. So you can definitely control the access uh, to any screen that your child has, and you can also monitor the time. And the fact that they are getting extra screen time could be because you are either too busy or you don't have enough ways of sort of engaging them, or you are a little passive about it, and those kind of issues. But if you really want to monitor the screen time, then you have complete authority over the remotes as parent, and also their laptops and gadgets. So you really need to first define how much maximum screen time are you willing to give your child. Because of course, if they have a lot of screen time and if they have easy access to the screen, then they are going to obviously choose screen over books, because you can get so much information without any effort. You don't have
Hmm.
to sit, you don't have, because for small kids, reading can also be a little difficult because they take time to read words and
Hmm.
to blend the letters and to make those words. And it might not be a very easy experience to start off with, unless you are anyway naturally inclined and you like doing it, and because you like doing it, you already have mastered reading, and then it becomes very easy for you to read, and then you want to read more of it. So it's like a cycle, you like it, you become good at it, and it becomes easy, and then you don't mind reading over
Reading.
screen time. But because you are not great at it, you don't want to practice it, it's become a more difficult experience for you. And so then automatically you are going to choose screen over reading. So as parents, it's very important that you monitor how much screen time are you giving. And for reading, like once you take away access to all that extra screen time, because they have so
Correct.
much free time, then they have to have activities that they do in those free times. And then, reading can be one of those activities. So that is one way. So once you limit the screen time, automatically there is a lot of scope for you to do other things. But
Hmm.
if you give in the child is crying or throwing a fuss and you're giving the remote or you're giving access to screen time, then of course, you're never going to get what you are really planning to get. That is one. And the other thing that you could do in order to encourage them to read is you can have a limit reward system where you can put a reading as a limit, but this is again like a method where you're slow sort of
Pushing.
forcing them to read, pushing
Correct.
them to read. But that again, sometimes this also helps because 10 15 minutes of reading every day, if it is set as a limit, it's going to help them improve how to read. It's going to
Correct.
become easier for them, and eventually you don't have to be very pushy because it's become easy for them. So they are like, okay, it's not very difficult, I'm just going to do it. But initially, 2 3 months, you might have to be, like do 10 minutes, and only then will you get screen time.
Yeah.
So, read one chapter and then I'm going to give you screen time. And there are such beautiful things that you can do with books, like activities around books, that if you had to rename the title or if you had to give this book a new title, what would it be? Who's your favorite character from the book? Why is she your favorite character? And actually, I was with my niece, and this was an assignment from school, and I loved it. And so she had to read a book. So every weekend, they have to read one book, and then they have to answer a few questions based on the book they've read. And the questions were like this, rename the book, pick your favorite
Oh.
character, give her a new name, give her a new name. Why is she your
Hmm.
favorite character? If you could remove one character from this book, who would it be? Why would you remove this character? So, those, if you
That's
if you
nice.
wanted to give this book a different ending, what would it be? So if you
Hmm.
have, like, maybe your child might enjoy these kind of activities, when they're reading with an aim. Sometimes they don't understand why are we reading. But when you
Reading.
give them like an aim to read, like, once you read, I'm going to ask you who's your favorite character. So they're like, okay, I'm going to read properly. I want to figure out who is going to be my favorite character. And I'm going to find out how I'm going to rename this book. So they have an intention and they have, an understanding of why are they reading. So you
Mhm.
can actually try this with your kids. And I feel if you try all of this, then something should work out. But
Something
limiting
should happen.
screen time is definitely something that is very important if you want, because time is like fixed. So if they are getting 5 6 hours of screen time, then obviously there is no time left for reading. But if
Hmm.
you can monitor that, then you have time for them to read.
Yeah, because and I believe that if you start reading early, you will never face this problem. First,
That is so
secondly, if
true.
you read, when you read, your children will automatically read because they understand that this is a part and parcel of life. This is not something
Right,
which is thrown at me. And because if we are always on the phone, a child would actually want phone. So yeah, we have to bring
right,
changes in ourselves as well.
right.
But
That
ma'am,
is so true.
how important do you think is to select a book? Because, there are so many books available in the market. There are so many cheap books available in the market. At the same time, they're very expensive as well. So parents are actually, they always think that, I don't know why I should spend so much. Reading hi to karwani hai. I can, might as well
Right.
buy a cheaper book and get started with that. But how important it is because, we feel that it's very important for you to select a correct book at the correct age.
Right,
So what is your take on
right.
that, ma'am?
See, I feel that when you are spending time, you should spend it wisely. If you are exposing your child to content, you should try and expose your child to good content. So instead of buying two cheap books, buy one book instead. But try and get a good book where your child will connect. Because sometimes the pictures, images, all of that also really makes a difference.
Mhm.
So, and of course, if there is somebody who's writing a beautiful book, there is something, deep, and there's something very serious going on, and your child is going to show more interest automatically. Also,
Mhm.
the illustrations play a huge difference. So definitely, anything, even if you're giving screen time, you have to be mindful of the content that your child is consuming. You're not just going to play anything and let your
Correct.
child watch, right? So even with screen time, you're conscious. When you're traveling, you're very conscious about the hotel that you're going to. And even if you are going for a cheaper option, you want to find the best in your budget. So with books also, it's not like only expensive books are good. That's not
Mhm.
right. There are many authors who are offering cheap books, and those books are also very good. So it's not more about the price. I feel you select based on the reviews, and there are so many resources online where you can really check, which author is good and what books are good for my child. And then you go to one of these resources and make a list of books that you want to read over a period of 2, 3 months. And then you start getting those books for your child.
Yeah.
So, of course, put some effort in selection. Don't just randomly go and buy anything without understanding how is it. Put some effort in selection and yeah, and just get it. And if it's too expensive, I'm not like, you don't really
Yeah,
have
of
to
course.
save a lot of money and all of that just to make sure that you have that one because that is by the best author. There is no such thing. All books are good, but like from the budget that you have for books, you select the best. So put some effort in selecting, I would say. That would
Yeah.
really make a lot of difference.
Yeah, so because we at Fun of Fable, we really believe that at least till a certain age time, the age group, like till 7 years of age, children should not read the very famous fairy tales because the ending of it, the parents are dying, there's a stepmother, there's always a prince charming to come and help the girl. So, these ideas should not be encouraged at least at a very young age because that's when they are building up their personality. It's that's where when parents come and tell us, oh, we want fairy tales for our children, and we're like, sorry, we do not deal in fairy tales because of certain reasons, because the research has also shown that the child asks very difficult questions. Why the parent has died? Will you also die? Do I actually need a prince charming to come and make my life good? I mean, these are the questions, and probably, we believe that, a child should not be exposed
Right.
to that kind of a literature at least till the age of 7, when they are actually like post 7, they have their own personalities. They understand the difference between reality and fiction. So,
Right.
that's why, this is very important for you to choose the right book. Now,
Right.
ma'am, the most important question we want to ask, how do you think, or how have you seen in your experience that, you can actually mold a child's behavior, the tantrums, the stubbornness by reading? Can reading help parents in that?
I feel it has a huge, huge influence on your child's behavior. And there is so much, and I feel your child can really mature and become more practical and sensible about his actions if you are reading the right books to your child. And because it's all information that you're exposing your child to, and they can really connect with the character, and they sometimes also want to be like that character. So there are many messages like, there was this Bubble series, where, the child is crossing and lets go of his mother's hand and then he meets with an accident. So that's a very important message that, when you are crossing the road, make sure you're holding somebody's hand. And
Mhm.
I read this book to Veer multiple times. And then when we were crossing the road once, he was like, I'm going to hold you tight and make sure you don't leave my hand. So,
That's
they
good.
link, they always
Hmm.
make those connections. And I was like, of course, I'll not leave you. Then, brushing your teeth. And you can have like stories about like getting cavity, going to the dentist, getting hammered. And then your child wants to avoid that whole experience. And it's going to be very easy for you to convince your child to brush his teeth. And when you're doing this reading, don't do it like, when your child is brushing his teeth, then you're standing with the book and reading, then they understand what you're trying to do. But do it in advance. When you have done it, they can actually make that connection and they'll act a certain way. And then also there was this beautiful story about a pigeon and a stork where the pigeon, no, sorry, the peacock. And the peacock was very proud of her feathers, of his feathers, and the stork was obviously not very beautiful. And the peacock was making fun and like, "You are not good. Your feathers are not pretty,"
Hmm.
and all of that. And then he was like, I can fly. You can't fly." So the message was that
Hmm.
we all have something good about us and we don't always have everything. So,
Correct.
those kind of messages you can actually tell your child, and there is Mr. Men series, which I really love. They have different characters, and those characters, have very unique features like Mr. Tall, Mr. Short, Mr. Sunshine, Miss Sunshine, and they are all very happy with who they are. And sometimes, they show that somebody is not very happy and
Mhm.
how they try to become different characters, and eventually they decide that no, I'm very happy with the person that I am and I don't want to change myself. So these stories can really have a huge influence on your child, because when I asked Veer, like, who do you want to be, and he told me this, he was like, I just want to be Rajveer. I was like,
Oh,
why? And this was
that's
a
nice.
question which, they were asked in school. Everybody had to become something. And, kids were like, I want to be superhero and Spider-Man and this and that. And Veer was like, I just want to be Rajveer. And I was
Awesome.
like, wow. And I was like, why? I was like, because I'm different. And, like, so kids, they actually make those connections. And it's very important that you read and you tell stories. Sometimes you can also make up your own stories. That also really helps. And I make up stories all the time. I also have this 20-minute story parenting plan as a part of my 5-day master class, where I
Oh,
talk about the importance of stories and how you should tell stories and how can you use stories to bring about those behavioral changes in your kids that you want to see. And definitely, I feel that books are the best way. Books and stories are the best way to actually teach your kids about kindness, honesty, and those different changes in behavior that you want or would like to see in your child.
ma'am, actually, one of the participant, she asked that probably she has a blind child, and she wanted to understand as to how should I teach reading to my blind child. I think if you would like to answer that, because
I'm not very sure, but like in terms of telling a story, that I think you should not have a problem with. You can obviously tell stories to your child. Also, I think for blind kids, there are special schools where they'll teach them how to read and Braille. Yeah, so I think
yeah.
you'll have to get in touch with them and they'll teach your child how to read it. But of course, you'll need a help from an expert when it comes to special kids.
Correct.
Yeah, but
Correct.
telling
And
stories and reading out stories, giving those value
should
messages,
not differ.
and seeing those behavioral changes in your child should not be a problem at all. You should definitely read to your child every day. When it comes to them reading on their own, that's when you need an expert. But when it comes to
Yeah.
introducing them to books and reading books to them, that's not a problem, I feel.
Yeah. Because there is braille literature available, of course. Probably it will not be easily available in India. You'll have to do some research work, and you can order it, I think, online for the child. So yeah.
Right.
So, ma'am, we really had a wonderful, insights into how you raised a child who is such a beautiful reader. At the same time, how it affected his, the behavioral changes and everything. And yes, we should keep repeating. We should not give up. That is one message which is
Right.
just very clear. If your child is not liking the book, it's okay. Introduce it again after some time. And that was a beautiful insight, ma'am. If you have any last words to share with us, some more
So
insights.
I think, like, of course, all of what I've shared, but the most important thing, if you want your child to read, start reading just 5 pages every day, not too much, and make sure your child is watching you when you're reading. And that is going to make a lot of difference, and you will notice that difference. Also, sometimes read books, that are relevant to you. Sometimes you can sit with your kids' book and you can read those books, and yeah, you'll see that they'll invite themselves and they will like to join you and have some fun and try and understand what your child likes. This is also important, something that I forgot to mention. So, if your child is very fond of helicopters, try and have helicopters in your story. Even if it's not there in the book, you can just make it up and
Make it up.
put it somewhere like an imaginary helicopter. So, my son is very fond of cows. So initially, all my stories had cows in them. Even if I'm making up a story and if cow is completely irrelevant, the cow is just standing outside the house, and that is all that the cow is doing. It's a very beautiful house and a mother and a dog and everything is happening, but there is a cow outside the house. So
Cow.
that cow can actually act as a hook for your child and can make your child give you that attention and might want your child to actually go through that whole story. So if you're getting a beautiful book and if you feel it's not uh, working for you and your child is still not showing interest, try and change the story a little. It doesn't
Right.
really matter, and try and make it interesting for your child. See if your child likes action, do some action. If your child is understanding the language, check for that. And of course, use your body, not just your voice. And when you're using your voice, also use voice modulation,
Modulation.
expression, yes, facial expressions, hand gestures, clap if characters are clapping. If cow is making a sound, make that sound. If wolf is making a sound, or different animals making different sounds, make those sounds. Don't read it very like flat, because sometimes the problem is not with kids showing interest. The problem is in the way we read those books
Way
to
we
them.
read. Correct.
Yes. So sometimes, we really need to work on ourselves. Not sometimes, actually, I feel all the time. We first really need to check if we are doing everything right. And
Correct.
then, it's okay to see and check for things that you can do differently to make it work for you and your child. So I think if you're doing all of this, it's great. And reading is great. You must read and read 5 pages every day. It's not too much. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. The last parting note I would like to say that, if your child is, there is not a single child who hates reading. The child has not found the right book. That is what it is. So
Right.
there can be no person who can hate reading. So thank you
Right.
so much for your time, ma'am. It was wonderful talking to you and beautiful
Thank you
insights
so
that you
much.
gave us. Thank you,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much, Sonia. It was really nice. Thank you.